What's up, Braves fans? We're back after a long hiatus. Too long. We got to get better at this. My name is Bryce, alongside Logan Whaley. This is the Chopaholic, a Braves podcast for those with an addiction to the Braves. I promise you we have one. It just doesn't make it out of the text thread sometimes. But that indeed, well, we welcome you in. It is indeed the All-Star break. We're recording this on Monday, July 13th, which is the Home Run Derby. Logan, I don't know about you, but this was really a fun week growing up, mostly because I was a massive baseball fan. And still am, but was a massive baseball fan growing up. And once you got past July 4th, it's when the school supplies started making their way to the local stores and everything. And you kind of needed one last thing of summer. And this to me was it. This week I used to get with my buddies. We'd play wiffle ball, watch the Home Run Derby, obviously the All-Star game. A tragedy that the Futures game was during the middle, just ridiculous scheduling. That was dumb, so stupid.
Yeah, we need that in the draft as well. Rob Manfred saying Rock Chalewski first pick. It was MLB, man. It feels like two steps forward with the popularity of the game, the rule changes, and then it still just cannot stop getting in its own way. It's amazing.
Can't get in its own way. It's brutal.
But you are right. You are right. This week is a very fun week. I was actually in Atlanta last year for the All-Star Week. That was a super fun experience. So once in a lifetime, it felt like a once in a lifetime thing. I felt like it would never be in Atlanta again for so long, right? We had that fun little dramatic thing in 2020, right? 2020, 2021, something like that.
Did they announce it in 2020? They were taking it away for the 2021. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Something. We won the World Series. It's all right.
Yeah. Who cares? That's right.
But no, to your point, it's a really fun time of the year. You mentioned, two steps forward, a step back. I think that's how a lot of Braves fans view the season right now.
Right. So true.
Pretty good analogy there. But man, let's just kind of dive in. Obviously, the last episode we talked about was Joey Wentz getting hurt and not being a factor this season.
Yeah, it feels like it's been 5 years since we've done one of these things.
It is. I found myself today watching a live stream, one camera shot of Ha-Seong Kim hitting a home run at Cool Today Park. Nice. Ron Acuna struck out in his first plate appearance, and then Andrew McCutchen. Yes, that'll be a baseball grid pick right there. Andrew McCutchen, Atlanta Brave. We'll see if he makes the big league team. But that being said, Logan, it's the All-Star break. We've labeled this kind of an All-Star break check-in. I saw a tweet from someone in the Braves, not like official media sphere, but obviously like the YouTube sphere, and they said, if you would have told Braves fans back in February, hey, you're going to have a 2-game lead at the All-Star break, they would have been like, that's amazing. I think it's important to note that, but it's also important to note the fact of like how we got here. So I think it's a balance of not opinion, but a balance of how you look at this, how you analyze this season, because a lot has gone right for specific guys. Like we can dive into that, but a lot has also gone wrong. And I guess just maybe your 30,000 foot view thoughts on kind of how we've gotten to this point. Obviously the Braves won, salvaged the game 3 in St. Louis to maintain that 2-game lead.
Yeah. On a wonderful hit by pitch call there, which
Michael Harris is making the rounds today, by the way, on social media, letting people know that,
here's this hidden angle that I don't think any broadcast showed. I don't know where he got this angle from. Maybe I missed it on the Braves broadcast. But no, to your point on the 30,000 foot view, I do think it was a good first half, right? I mean, anytime you could go into the break with a division lead, that's amazing. I think if you flipped maybe the slump at the start of the season to, then you get to the break on a heater, I think fans would feel a lot better about this season. But again, you always hear it, you want to slump now versus slump in October. But at the same time, I think people can use that to downplay the issues that are there on this team. And, it's a long season. I'm excited to see what the second half brings, especially at the deadline. I think a lot of Braves fans have that circled on the calendar because, again, you go to ESPN.com, you look at the top 100, trade prospects, so to speak. And it feels like, they always list the best fits. And I swear it feels like on every single player on that list, it has the Braves as a fit. So there are needs on this team, obviously, that need to be filled. I'm a fan of how the first half went as a whole. I think that there are a lot of positive signs to take away.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of start with this. I mean, you mentioned the good, the bad, the ugly. Michael Harris, we've already talked about him briefly there. Like, resurgence has been unreal, right? Like with what they've been able to have him do this year. I think that's phenomenal. And then you turn around and you look at the ugly, it's been Austin Riley. Like,
Right.
it's I want to say this first off, it's very, very rare to have all 9 hitting at an above average, really good level. Like, that's obviously your peak, right? That's what you want to be. So I think the frustration level is that you have players that you're paying one, that you've locked up, that and you really can't move. That's let's put the asterisk right there. You really can't move from, but you have to have patience with. And I understand, there's been a lot of conversation. I've talked to people about the Braves' window of contention, and you know, to me, Logan, I know we had the stretch there, as Braves fans from 2013 when they made the rebuild around Freddie, to obviously 2016, 2017 when they moved into Truist, and then have that first year where they probably overachieved a little bit.
Yeah.
But all that to say is, like, it's a team that, to me, the window of contention is always going to be open, because I don't truly think that this franchise, and man, hopefully I'm not putting my foot in my mouth, I don't think this franchise is ever going to be a spot where like they're on a 20 or 10 to 12 year playoff drought. Like, I don't like they're going to be a playoff team. They're a playoff caliber franchise. But that World Series window, a lot of people start to feel like it's dwindling down. You'd like to see one last push from some of these guys, because you're going to have to start paying some of that market rate value for those guys that you locked up in those deals. So all that being said is the patience, right? Like, how long is the leash with some of the guys that you've had struggling, right? You could have made the argument some people wanted to, have a make or break year for Michael Harris this year. Well, he's made it. You know what I mean? He looks the
Right.
part of what you signed that early extension. Austin Riley, on the other hand, is a guy that, what is it? The OPS has dipped every year. It's obviously been something that they've been challenged with. They've kind of looked at how they're going to, do some certain things. But I guess just talk about Austin Riley, man. The struggles. I joke about this. I genuinely don't know if he can see the ball. Like, I don't think he's seeing anything well. And it kind of feels like it's, I don't want to say luck, but it's so difficult for him to make solid contact, even in a consistent fashion, but just in general right now.
Yeah, it's so bizarre because you watch Austin and he'll have a good game, and then he'll follow it up with just the worst game you've ever seen. I cannot wrap my mind around it. It is it's going to be an interesting case study because you talk about the OPS dipping for 5 consecutive seasons. I think the stat was out there. I think it was someone on Buster Olney's podcast who talked about how he's the youngest player in the live ball era to see 5 consecutive seasons with that level of decline with OPS. It is a bizarre thing. I don't know how you overcome it, but at the same time, it's going to depend on what happens in the second half of the season. He's been moving down in the lineup. I think there's less pressure on him though in the lineup, which is a good thing, and I think that's one of the key. That's one of the key things that Alex Anthopoulos wanted to accomplish this offseason was add depth to the lineup, and I really think you're seeing that depth come into play, even with all the injuries, even with I mean we're starting guys like Brewer Hicklin and Jim Jarvis is having to come up and play big. I was again still in basketball mind. Big minutes was
Yeah.
there, but it's true. Jim Jarvis has played really well. Brewer Hicklin obviously had a great debut, but it's that depth that has me excited because what happens when these guys get healthy. Then to me, I think that's less pressure for Austin Riley to perform, even though he does have the contract. He is the highest paid player on the team. But when all these guys get back and when Austin Riley does not have that pressure that has been mounting, I'm curious if that leads to some sort of resurgence in the second half. I don't know that the chances of it happening, it doesn't seem too great. But at the same time, we've seen it before. So it's just a matter of him unlocking something. And who knows? Who knows what it will take for him to unlock that?
Yeah, I think with Riley, to me, the best case scenario for the last 70 so games that you've got remaining in the regular season is maybe something clicks where he can have a really good, uses the last part of July to figure some things out. It really just takes a mental reset this week. Like gets to go home and I mean, I think that's something too, like just the mental slog that you're probably in, the mental fog you're in, to be able to turn around and say, okay, let me take a week off, reset, and let's roll. You add into that, Logan, with Riley, like I think the best case scenario is that he finds himself figuring, maybe tinkering some things. You start to see some signs of it. And then the last 35, 40 games or so, maybe he catches what he becomes the player that, he can be and has shown to be at times. And then, you just get into the offseason, right? Like there's not, the sample size is way too large at this point to suggest that he's going to come out and, bat 365 the rest of the year. It's not who he is in general. But I think if you could just somehow get to a point to where you end August and September on a positive note, regardless of what this team does in the postseason, that gives you some confidence heading into an offseason where you can say, okay, I can at least take something away. To me, it's nightmare fuel, not for fans or anyone, but for Austin Riley himself. Like if you can't find anything positive from this season, that to me would be the worry. So if you see him come out and what's that average at? Like the average was like a 209, I think, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's borderline Mendoza line.
I mean, if you could get it up, if he could end the season at around 230, 240, like that would be incredible, I think. And that's going to take you got to get hot to get that just because of the amount of plate appearances.
Well, and the injuries too. I mean, the last 2 seasons, he's really struggled with that. He has not been able to stay healthy. And I think, whenever he did get the big contract, he was a consistent part of the lineup. And now he's having to deal with injuries and having to overcome that too. You're going to have to look up exactly what the injuries were. I think one of it was a core. Was it a core injury? Yeah. And then another was a wrist injury. I mean, those things are tough to overcome too. And I think you look at Ozzy Albies as well. You're seeing Ozzy. He had a very prolonged slump returning from injury, and this year we're finally seeing him return to the Ozzy Albies of 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, if you're a Braves fan, that's where you're drawing hope from is looking at other guys who have underperformed in the past, like Ozzy, return to form this year and saying, hey, it can be done.
Yeah. Well, and it can be done, right? You look at Michael Harris year over year. You look at Ozzy Albies. Listen, I think Drake Baldwin's way too good of a hitter to be in the slump that he was in coming off that injury. And he's already shown some signs of doing some things for you. The depth of the lineup, it should help you down the stretch. But I guess let's really kind of get into what we need to talk about here. Like, you have your MVPs. We can't forget about Mauricio Dubon, who has been that and advertised, not even just from his offensive, but like just the versatility. I don't know if Braves fans have fully appreciated, and they love Mauricio Dubon, but
right,
appreciate what he has done and the holes that he has filled up. And look, we can have conversations about what you should have done in the offseason. And I think you and I are two more of the optimistic looking at the Braves. And even we think, hey, would have been nice to maybe do this. A lot of that is hindsight after the fact. Like, I don't want to get into the semantics of what we talk about in the Discord. You can join the Discord and talk about it, but you don't know that certain things are going to happen. It's very easy to after the fact say, hey, should have made this move, should have made that move. Well, yeah, I mean, if you knew a certain player was going to do something in that season, you would have made that move. You would have paid the money knowing what you have. But just going forward, like this time of the year is really when we start to see that trade rumor mill kick up. You mentioned some of the best fits. I'll just say this. Let's start off with position players because I think pitching is going to be interesting. What feasibly can you do? Because I guess I hesitate. Anytime we talk about big, earth-shattering, ground-moving type of ground-shaking trades, when it comes to lineup, it's hard to do because of the contractual obligations you have to not play the guy, but you kind of do. Like you're paying this guy; he has to figure it out. Just your thoughts. Like where can you upgrade? Can you look for a shortstop? Can you get away with a Jim Jarvis, Jorge Mateo combination? Do you need to go get a right-handed bat in the outfield? I know we just played him. Do you get to say that ridding Ronald Acuna is going to be getting a trade deadline acquisition? Like,
oh no,
and that's a whole nother story in Acuna himself. We can talk about that on another episode. But like, what feasibly what can you make here to improve this lineup and help it out where you have some guys playing really well, but you probably need a little more length at this point?
You just pulled a Chip Carey, and I can't let that go on. Which, I live in Cardinals territory here.
So you do,
yeah. So I had to watch the Cardinals broadcast for the 3 games, and so that hit me close to home too, having to listen to Chip Carey for 3 games. God bless him, he's great. But yeah, I think position player wise, look, I think you do need some sort of impact bat with the corner outfield in particular. I don't think ever since Profar got suspended that there has been an answer in left field. There just hasn't been. I think Yastrzemski was brought in to be kind of a premium bench bat, and he's been thrust into kind of an everyday role and platooning with Eli White. And I think that's not going to be sustainable for the rest of the season. There's just no way. There's just no way. And I think you look at earlier in the season, I mean, Ha-Seong Kim will be back eventually. And I feel like he's going to be given just about every chance in the world with the 1-year contract that he has to prove it. Because the Braves, look, down the road, they have that question mark at shortstop. They don't know how that's going to be filled. So I do think you're going to see, if Jeff Jarvis continues to play well, I think he could definitely, he's going to get a lot of run. I feel like Ha-Seong Kim's going to get run. But man, it would be really nice if there was a shortstop available to
CJ Abrams.
Yeah, CJ Abrams. Yeah, that was it was on my mind there. The only thing that concerns me about Abrams is the fielding. I think that's about the only thing that you can poke a hole in with CJ Abrams. But yeah, someone like that though, it would be a massive boost to the lineup.
Yeah. I was just looking at some of the mentioned names, there. CJ Abrams is obviously a guy that I think Atlanta likes, all-star for the Washington Nationals, has had a really good year. The problem is Washington's kind of in the hunt here. You know what I mean? Like it's
right.
That, and it's, the interdivision trade, which make things interesting, but it's also the fact that Washington's not, they've got a chance to make a move. I think elsewhere, you look at, and this is obviously, Logan, best case scenario, but Yastrzemski was 110% brought in to be a platoon bat. He's had to play right field a lot, obviously, too, with Acuna's injury. Michael Harris is exactly what you thought he was going to be. If you're going to, here's kind of where I roll with this. If you're going to make a move in the lineup, does it force you to say this is where Mauricio Dubon is playing the rest of the season?
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you're going, let's just say Acuna comes back. Let's just say August 1st. They're obviously they're slow playing this hamstring injury for sure, and I understand why. But let's say you put Acuna back in right. You got Michael Harris in center. I think at shortstop, you're more willing to say, hey, if we can have the good glove, we're fine with putting Jim Jarvis. Like Jim Jarvis is a plus defender. When the Braves went and got him for Rafael Montero, was it last year and a half, 2 years ago? Yeah. Like that's massive. So I hate to say it like this. Is he going to be worse than Nick Allen was? No, I think he's going to be better than Nick Allen was. So are you saying, hey, we're fine with him at short? Does that put Dubon in left? And you start platoon, like someone's either going to have to play. Jim Jarvis, to me, is going to have to play his way into the everyday starting role in the next week or two. Because you're going to have to decide what to do with Dubon. And truth be told, like, do you ease Acuna in as the DH and put Baldwin back behind the plate? Like, there's just a lot of scenarios that I think the roster construction is good enough. I'll just say this. The roster construction, to me, is good enough to reach an NLCS from an offensive standpoint with people hitting. Beyond that, you've got to have things go your way. You got to have guys get hot. That piece, whether it's adding 1 bat or 2 bats, that's going to be what's interesting to me. Is there a right-handed or left-handed outfield bat that you can go get that makes sense for you? I'll just tell you this. I think he would benefit a ton from a change of scenery, and I'd have to do more of a deep dive, and maybe over the next couple of weeks we do some deep dive into the true targets. I think if you could go, and I'm leaning into pitching here, you go to Boston and go get Jarren Duran and like a Sonny Gray, that fills 2 needs. I'll just give you my dream deadline scenario is probably Duran, Sonny Gray, and then go to out west and get Reed Detmers. get you into the lefty. Like I like Reed Detmers, but we'll talk pitching in a second. But just your thought, like how much of a role does Mauricio Dubon's versatility play in how you can what you're really looking for? Because I don't know if you're pigeonholed and just saying we got to go get a shortstop, we got to go get a left fielder with Dubon's versatility and having that conversation with him. Where does he need to play?
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. I think, if I'm a general manager and I'm looking at that versatility, I'm saying, hey, whatever the best bat is that we can get that helps this lineup right away. Because look, even if you do leave Jim Jarvis in, right, that's a defensive guy. Sean Murphy's going to be back at some point. That will be a defensive-minded catcher. Yeah. That's a lot of defense in the lineup, and you're going to need a power bat of some sort. Dominic Smith is not working. Yeah, it's just fact of the matter. Olsen, I mean, look at the lineup, right? The guys that have pop, realistically, it's Olsen, it's Acuna, but Acuna's pop hasn't exactly come back yet to what it was, and Austin Riley's been struggling. So, I mean, who are the guys that with one swing of the bat can genuinely change the game? Riley or not Riley, Harris and Ozzie could, but they're not necessarily known for their power, right? So that's where I say it's great that Dubon is there, because yes, whoever you don't go for it at the deadline, you could just stick him in left or stick him at short and be fine. But it would be amazing if the Braves did add that power bat to complement wherever you stick Dubon out.
Yeah, and I think listen, I think Jorge Mateo is a very valuable bench player for you. The speed in general, like situational. We've seen Walt Weiss be more willing to sub guys out late in games. Jorge Mateo and give him, and I'm serious about this, if you don't address shortstop, let's just play the game that they ease Acuna into DH or whatever. You can start Dubon and Yastrzemski in the outfield alongside Harris. And then, you're sitting there, you want to get in the bat. If you go get an outfield bat, I can play with the idea of a Jim Jarvis, Jorge Mateo platoon. I will say, to me, the ship has sailed on Ha-Seong Kim. I mean, I don't expect much out of him over the last half of the season. Nightmare season has not worked out. Obviously, the injury, just nightmare fuel. But it was 1 year. It is what it is. I'll say this: you were never going to win or lose the World Series, in my opinion, based off the play of Ha-Seong Kim. You need other guys to step up. So if you want to be frustrated as a Braves fan, be more frustrated that Austin Riley's having a down year, that you've had some injuries, that your pitching staff wasn't invested in and playoff caliber. That's the Ha-Seong Kim situation. I think it's just an easy, low-hanging fruit for Braves fans who are already frustrated to get even more mad about.
Sure. Yeah.
But just kind of closing the book on that offense, I do wonder, because I think Drake Baldwin's bat is way too valuable to take out of the lineup, and Sean Murphy's defense. You mentioned this in the Discord today. Like, you probably need his ability to call the game. Like, even if he doesn't hit the rest of the year, like which he'll have, he'll have a week and a half span where he blasts the cover off the baseball, 4 home runs, and does that kind of thing. But if you're going to start Sean Murphy at catcher, if you're going to roll with Jake Baldwin at DH, that how you configure the lineup on a day-to-day basis is going to be interesting. But Walt Weiss has to have the proper tools. And so that's probably the biggest storyline I'm interested in is, do you go in, don't pigeonhole yourself into saying we need a shortstop, we need a left fielder, we need a right fielder. Yeah. Kind of allow this thing to play out. And like you said, when the market starts to be dictated and maybe that first or 2 or 3 dominoes are made, that's when you can get a better feel of, hey, what's the going rate for a 4th outfielder or a platoon outfielder? What's the going rate for a starting shortstop? I mean, I'm going to tell you one thing. Washington was already not going to let C.J. Abrams go for a cheap price, and as much as I like him, they're definitely not going to let him go when trading him to the division leader. And that's that key right there for me as well.
Well, the only thing I would say to push back a little bit against that, I think shortstop has been the one position that Alex Anthopoulos, outside of starting pitching, because this offseason, yes, it was starting pitching or bust, but I mean, Anthopoulos mentioned shortstop as a heavy need for the team. He is the type to, again, Anthopoulos rarely makes a trade that is so short term, where it's a 1 year thing. Just rarely. I think the only other instance where he made a 1 year type of trade was the David Price and Troy Tulowitzki trade when he was
at that magnitude. We're talking about, obviously,
yes.
The 2021 trades were really cool, but no one at the time thought they were like a massive needle mover. They ended up being that. But yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Yes. So I do think that he will be accounting Profar in there. at some point when it comes to acquiring a back. And I do think he will look at someone for this year, but as far as impact back goes, I don't think the needle moving trade is going to be for an outfield bat. I think the needle moving trade would be for a CJ Abrams type.
I'd welcome it. I'd welcome having CJ Abrams in the top half of my lineup there for sure. Let's move over to pitching. I mentioned Sonny Gray, Reed Detmers. We've seen names like Casey Mize being flown around. Listen, I'll say this: the Braves, you need to go add two guys that can start playoff games for you. Chris Sale's nearing territory to where, depending on how much longer he wants to play, I wouldn't have said this 2 or 3 years ago, but you're now entering a territory where like there's an option for him to make the case as he wants to go in the Hall of Fame as a Brave, like with the season, the numbers he's putting up and things like that. Now, he's your number one guy. The law of averages, the back of the baseball card finally took over for you, Logan, and Bryce Elder has shown his true colors. I really like J.R. Ritchie. I like Didier Fuentes. I think, Jeff Francoeur came out and said this week or today that he wouldn't mind seeing him be stretched as a starter. All those things being said, like, you need to go get two guys that you can, in a 5-game series, you're going to throw those three. And in a 7-game series, should you reach that, you're probably going to get to see at least two of those guys twice. So when you look at the market, it feels like, and just, I was listening to a podcast today about it. It feels like it's going to be a pretty robust starting pitching market. Like there's going to be some starting pitching available. And they said one of the best bets you can count is the Braves adding at least one playoff caliber starter. Like that, it's not a secret that that's what they're trying to do, which is very stark contrast from how AA has handled things in the past. But that being said, I guess when you look at this, is it two starters? Like we can talk bullpen. I think once the bullpen gets healthy, it's going to be better. And maybe you can add to your surplus there. But man, if you could go get two playoff caliber starters, I would feel miles better about this rotation heading into the back half of the season.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, again, if you add two, that's a surplus to me, because of the guys that, the way that the Braves is structured right now, you have a lot of guys that could be a viable fourth or fifth starter. Mm-hmm. Right now, though, the Braves can't find a number two or number three. And that's where it gets really tricky. I mean, you have guys, Ronaldo Lopez. He's been inconsistent, since returning to the starting rotation. I look at his. I think there were a couple starts there where he ran into trouble in the first inning, and then he looked fine through 5.
Yeah.
So that is an encouraging sign that he's able to get through 5 and to do that. But do you want to count on Ronaldo Lopez in the playoffs? Do you want to count on Bryce Elder in the playoffs? Do you want to count on Grant Holmes in the playoffs? Like, I think no one can reasonably feel comfortable with anyone outside of Chris Sale in a playoff start. So, yeah, you've got to get two, in my opinion, because that would allow, hey, Grant Holmes, maybe, hey, there's, Ronaldo Lopez struggles in the rotation. Maybe throw him back in the bullpen as a long relief guy. There's so many flexible options, I think. We talk about how strong the bullpen is. You add a couple of playoff caliber starters, that only makes the bullpen stronger, if not the best in the league, in my
opinion. I was looking at this, going back to how you could play it out. Like, let's say you get to the playoffs. I would love to see Grant Holmes and Ronaldo Lopez pitch in a game 4, like piggybacking each other.
Yes.
I don't want to see them pitching game 2 and 3.
Yep.
I don't want to see that. So if you're throwing Chris Sale in game 1 and talking about some of those options, was looking at this. It was reported over at The Athletic that, like I says, it's according to people familiar with the situation who are not authorized to speak freely on the topic. It's called a source for you people that don't work in the media world. The Braves have already checked in on Sonny Gray. Now we know the ties, right? Sonny Gray, where he's from and everything like that. He does have a no trade clause. I thought this was interesting though, Logan, when you looked at it. He's having his one of his best years in years, kind of return to form. Sonny Gray's always been a name that the Braves have flirted with, it feels like. Here's the thing. If the Braves traded for him, they would be on the hook for around $3.6 million this remaining year. That's chump change for a number 2 or 3 starter in the playoffs. You're paying that all day long. What's intriguing is that he is deemed a rental, but he does have a 2027 option that's $31 million. I know that makes people nervous. $31 million at 37 years old. But you do have a $10 million buyout. So if Atlanta doesn't like what they see over the past, or they don't feel comfortable paying the 31, and we'll see, but if they made that move, the max that you're on the hook for is 13 and a half. That's combined with the 3.5 over the last 2 months of the season, plus the $10 million buyout that you would have heading into next year. So I think it's almost a no-brainer. Like, I think you go get Sonny Gray. It's what can you do from there, right? Casey Mize, a kid that pitched at Auburn, was a former top pick, like, has had a rash of injuries, having a good season. I guess it comes down to, man, like, do you go – I ask you this. Can you go get two – would you rather see them go get 2 or 3 middle of the rotation arms, or go and get Tariq Skubal and like a 4th or 5th starter?
So that's an intriguing question.
That's the intriguing question, I think.
I am very much on the camp of get Skubal. And the reason why is because any chance you get to get a top end starter, someone that changes an outlook of an entire rotation, you got to get them. How often do top 5 pitchers become available in trades?
It's fair.
It's rare. And to me, that's a rotation with Skubal and Sale. Again, the rest of the rotation, I don't know what Anthopoulos could do. I don't know if he could go get Sonny Gray. Red Sox are also red hot right now, so who knows if they're even willing to sell right now with how the American League is shaping up. But and Tigers too, to that point. Tigers are also looking really good at this point. And by really good, I mean in the hunt. There's like no one fully out of it in the American League, and it's so frustrating. But with that aside, I just look at the top teams in the National League. The commonality with those guys, how left-handed heavy they are. I mean, you look at the Phillies, right? You got Schwarber, you got Harper. You look at the Dodgers, you got Freeman, Ohtani. Those are the guys that you're going to be playing in October. And to have a dominant lefty from another league that they barely have seen before would be amazing. Like, I don't know what Braves fans would not be excited about Tariq Skubal in their rotation. Of course, it's a short-term move. Of course, you're probably not gonna bring him in long term, and that's the sad, unfortunate thing. But look, any chance you get to add a guy that makes your World Series window, even if it is right now, you don't lose anything, but you gain a top 5 pitcher. Obviously, the return is another story, and who knows what prospects the Braves would give up in a trade. But again, I love Tariq Skubal. I think he is elite. I think he's dominant. I think him being there with Chris Sale, who's another veteran and someone who still is dominant at this stage of his career. I mean, just how much better could Chris Sale make Tariq Skubal as well? Like that's stuff that I think about. I mean, the leadership, the veterans, the presence of that.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that, and people want to make the case of where he's a rental, and we could dive into the weeds of, and maybe we do this as we talk about the starting pitching in general over the next couple of weeks. But like, trade deadline's August the 3rd. You've roughly got 3 weeks to figure this thing out of what the package it would take. I don't care. Like, I think that's where I'm at. Of you have the prospect capital, get this done. You do, and you not only have prospect capital, you have the depth, in my opinion, that could be developed to replenish. That's something too, that when you go start to look at the roster in Rome, the roster in Augusta, like, this most recent draft class that you just went and spent on, and I think got really good value at in certain spots. When you do that, to me, Logan, it's like, hey, this is all positioning you to make a move. And the Braves are one of those franchises that every single year they come out with, and they're completely undervalued as a farm system, and they have some really good players that teams end up wanting on their roster and in their system. And I think when you look at Skubal, like, just make the move. Like, we'll never truly know unless the trade actually happens. I just want to know what the Detroit would ask for. Because I think if you start playing around with potential packages and it makes sense, and A looks around the room and says, let's pull the trigger on this, it changes everything. Like, Adding Scooble to this rotation changes everything, not just because he's elite, but because it settles people into roles they're probably more comfortable with.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. So Scooble, obviously, I think that's the dream option. A couple more names I'll throw in here, and here you just give me a thumbs up, okay? So I mentioned earlier Sonny Gray. Are we like we would like to see Sonny Gray in a Braves uniform? All right, we're good with that. Let's go with Casey Mize. I'd be fine. Like I would be fine with seeing Casey Mize in a Braves uniform. This is where it starts to get interesting. Robbie Ray. The contract could be a problem. I'm like this. Like if I need, I don't know. It's the risk, but he does. I will say he does have the raw stuff that he could pitch in the postseason, that plays in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals where if you really overpay for Scooble, and Robbie Ray is there, sure, I don't mind.
3 lefties would be crazy.
Would be.
Rotation.
It would be.
Seth Lugo is another name floating around. I'll say this, like veteran, I get it, but I feel like you already have too many Seth Lugo types. Yeah. That would be my thing. You have that model. Luis Severino is another name that is floating around. Like that's the scenario too, though, is right. Like
right.
I think in this world, the question I asked was, would you rather see them fill out their top 3 or go get Scooble and add a back end starter? Okay, if you get Scooble, let's go get Severino. Let's go get a Robbie Ray. That makes more sense. Shoot, if you could, Logan, if we're playing over the show, we turn forced trades on. I'm going to get Sonny Gray and Tariq Scooble. Like that's what I'm working with here. But just to round it out, I guess the package is going to be interesting, and we're going to hold ourselves to do another podcast here soon. So what we'll do is we'll kind of take a look at some of the prospects we might be willing to part with to make that happen, especially post All-Star break. But before we get you out of here, man, wanted to ask, what's one thing you just want to see change heading into the second half? Maybe not a bold prediction, but just something you're like, hey, if this changes, not talking about trades, but something internally, what needs to change, or what needs, flip needs to be switched for this thing to kind of get back on track?
Well, I would love, and again, best case scenario, right? You get a Scooble back, or you get a Scooble in a trade, right? And I know you just mentioned, trades notwithstanding, but to get guys healthy, I think is one thing, but to get them back healthy and performing at a career average level. So I'm talking about a Spencer Strider, talking about a Ronald Acuna, talking about Sean Murphy. I mean, guys like that. Hopefully we get AJ Smith-Shawver back in full form as well. So that, and again, and that's another reason I would love to see trade happen, because look, those guys, if you don't put pressure on them coming back, like, hey, I have to come back at peak form
immediately.
From right. I think that is massive. And if those guys do come back to form, I mean, you're talking about what goes from just an anemic rotation to, oh my gosh, this could be scary in a playoff scenario. That's what I would love to see. I just want these guys to get healthy, and I would love for them to be in a spot where they don't have to rush back. They don't have to feel this pressure to immediately come back and perform. And then just, again, I just want to see rebounds too. I want to see rebounds from Riley. I want to see, rebounds from, other guys like, I know Yastrzemski has been kind of slumping as of late. Hopefully, he could come back from the injured list and start to become a valuable, bench piece for us as well. So, just would love to see return to form, and would love to see guys get healthy.
2 things I want to see is I want to see Braves fans show a little more love towards Dylan Lee. Dylan Lee has been really, really good for you. And to me, kind of quieted some of my concerns about the left-handed option in the bullpen with what you had. I liked him a lot. 2, I just want to keep watching Matt Olson play baseball. This guy is one of the most underrated superstars in the game. Like, he is so good. And I just like watching him. I think Braves fans maybe a little bit spoiled because we've had down years, but we're one of the most successful franchises in baseball history. We've been really nice since 2010 or 2011 or whatever it was at the first base position. So for the past 4 14, 15 years now, with Freddie Freeman and Matt going right into Matt Olson. Like, you've got one Hall of Famer, Matt Olson. I imagine will be a Hall of Famer one day. Like, it's just been a lot of fun. So, indeed. Well, we do a little All-Star break check-in. Braves, not they're where they want to be, but the story, how they got there, has some fans leaning towards the railing on the side of the cliff. But that's okay. We still have 3 weeks to see what A and this group can do. It'll be interesting. I'll say this, in the next episode, we definitely should take a look at some of the prospects and what we think they're worth, because we always tend to overvalue our own prospects. But what are you willing to part with? What would a package look like? Look, I know there's several tools online where we can kind of create, the fair value trade and look at what that could look like to go get a Scooble, to go get a Sonny Gray and a Jaron Duran, something like that. So it'll be a lot of fun, man. But let's do it again soon. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Logan Whaley, my name is Bryce Scooble. Appreciate the time.